This podcast is brought to you by the post office. No, wait, that was my post. Never mind. Hello and welcome to Monkey Broadcast, a monthly review and discussion show with me, the Jonin Monkey.
And me, Sven the Crusader. E3!
Yes, E3, the moment every gaming journalist and everyone who plays video games waits for, which we, for some ungodly reason, decided, hey, even though we're always weeks behind, let's do a special on it anyway.
Every single year, but you people seem to enjoy it, so why not?
So yeah, we will get started with that pretty soon, but before we started, it's time for our traditional opening segment,
Q&A!
This is the section where we answer questions from the audience. If you'd like us to answer your questions, either leave them in the comments or send them to me via Twitter with the hashtag MBQuestion.
We say that because eventually someone else will use that. Our first question comes from Roy Havenstone.
Since Final Fantasy, Zelda, Pokemon, and Fire Emblem now all have their own orchestral music concerts, which video game franchises would you like to see get the same treatment? P.S. Brownie points for mentioning franchises in addition to Donkey Kong and Tales of.
God damn it!
Thanks, smartass.
Well, because that removes my first two options, I will need to think about this.
So will I, damn it!
I know they've done live recordings on YouTube already, but I would freaking love to see a Xenoblade Orchestra concert, because the soundtrack of that game, oh god, I swear, like every tune from that is glorious.
Yeah, I've never played Xenoblade, but I know what you mean because I've had music linked to me, and fair answer. Definitely a fair answer.
Admittedly, a lot of the music was linked to you by me.
I'm not complaining. As for me, yeah, Final Fantasy, Pokemon, and Fire Emblem, and Tales of have pretty well all depleted my stock of potential titles I'd mention. Unless I bring up Mario, because that would be hilarious. In fairness, I think Mario has already had a concert.
Yeah, I think both Mario and Donkey Kong have had kind of like a general concert where they were both together. Although, I'm just thinking, does Fallout have anything that would make good for an orchestra? I don't know.
No, because mostly the Fallout games have old music from the 1930s through 60s, which, while awesome, all the people who sang it are dead.
Good points, yeah.
And it wouldn't really make for a concert anyway, because it's all jazz, blues, and early country music.
Also true. The only other thing that pops in my head as well, admittedly it's a bit obscure, but Skies of Arcadia would probably make for a good orchestra concert as well.
Oh my god, yes. I remember the music in that game, and it was glorious. And now that I'm thinking of it, I would love to see a live Ennio Morricone-style concert of the Wild Arms series.
Oh, yes. I've only played Wild Arms 3, but I do remember some great tunes from that. And oh god, live version of the Wild Arms 3 opening. Epic.
Exactly. That was what I had in mind, in fact.
But the only soundtracks I could think of would not really be orchestral. Like, I would love to see I was about to say either Blaze Blue or Guilty Gear, but I've heard live clips of those songs before. And speaking of which, just to go on a slightly mild tangent, I know it's silly to rage against comments because it's the internet and YouTube. There's always going to be some stupid comments, but I hate it when people click on a live recording of something and then bitch about, oh no, I hate it when the audience is cheering. It's a fucking live performance. That's the whole point, that the crowd is there.
Yeah, I mean, what were you expecting? What kind of ignorant curmudgeon do you have to be to purposely seek out live concerts and then bitch about the audience?
Oh, this. But, yeah, getting back on topic and off my soapbox.
On my end, just to briefly go off the video game path, because Roy has put us in a bind here. Thanks, Roy. I will briefly talk about anime soundtracks, because I know that Fist of the North Star has gotten a live orchestral concert, and it was fantastic. So, what I would like to see is a live concert of all of Bleach, Berserk, and Naruto. Because, my god, the music in those series.
Yeah, Bleach I've always felt is a mixed bag, personally, because, what was it, Sadness in Sora, the piano piece of Bleach, that was awesome. The Ichigo power theme is not really.
Yeah, I mean, basically, the orchestral soundtrack, basically the stuff Shiro Sagisu is known for. He also did Berserk, funnily enough, and Neon Genesis Evangelion. I never remember the full title of that thing. He did that one. So basically what I'm saying is Shiro Sagisu full concert. And as far as Naruto goes, basically the whole soundtrack.
Yeah, to be honest, even though the anime went south even quicker than the original manga, I will admit the soundtrack of that is freaking awesome. I mean,
yeah, and just as far as the rest of the soundtrack goes, my god, Naruto Shippuden and its thing for Japanese folk metal.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, then again, it's composed by the same guy who did the Fairy Tail soundtrack, and the Fairy Tail soundtrack is the only good thing about Fairy Tail. But
yeah, I would definitely agree to that. The only other thing I can think of outside of video games would be Game of Thrones, but aside from that...
yeah. I'm not sure if they've ever had a live performance, but I would like to see one.
Although, that said, they did a live performance in Game of Thrones. If anyone started playing the Reigns of Castamere, I think the crowd would quickly desert.
In fact, they could lead to a hilarious stunt where they start playing the song and then all the doors shut. You're welcome for that image, by the way.
I believe we've given a wide range of answers for that question, so I will now swiftly move on to Roy's second question for this month, which is...
With the success of Disney films like Frozen and Big Hero 6, and CGI anime series like Knights of Sidonia, do you think that traditional hand-drawn animation will ever become a thing of the past?
Short answer, no. Long answer, no. Simply because I think it has too many fans.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, to give a longer but slightly more detailed answer... Well, two things. First of all, CGI animation lasts more in movies, but I think in TV it's a bit more difficult. Now, don't get me wrong, there are series with CGI animation on TV, but they've always been kind of ropey or slightly below the bar compared to the movie stuff, so I mean, yeah, I get that it's downgrading for TV and everything, but I think, like, in terms of cost and quality, it's not quite at the point where it can completely replace 2D animation. Plus, like Sven said, there are just way too many loyal fans and practitioners of 2D animation for it to completely disappear. I mean, hell, just to bring it back to video games briefly, the past month or so has shown that traditional styles of gaming don't go away. I mean, literally, all someone has to do these days is go on Kickstarter, say, "Hello, I am the original creator of this series, and I feel like I want to bring it back." Instantly, you get $1 million to make a game overnight.
Yeah, basically what we're saying is, hey, producers of Skies of Arcadia, Kickstarter. Anyway, moving on from that.
Oh, that'd be awesome. But yeah, yeah, I think even if CGI did reach the point where it rendered 2D animation not very cost effective, someone will bring it back, even if it's more on the independent scene.
Yeah, movies like Frozen and Big Hero 6 may be big, but what I've noticed looking at sites like Tumblr is that whenever people look past the stunning visuals, they've started to notice that these movies are way, way weaker than anything Disney has done before. And I'm inclined to agree, because after my first watch of Frozen where I really liked it, I actually analyzed the movie and I was like, Okay, parts of this make less sense than I thought they did. Why is this like so much? Compare that with a movie like The Princess and the Frog, which is still beloved by Disney fans. And yeah, I don't see traditional hand-drawn animation going anywhere anytime soon.
I wish I could comment, but I have not seen either Frozen or Big Hero 6 at this point. Which is odd, because I have a BA in animation art, so I should probably keep up with this kind of thing, but...
Yeah, I mean, that's just my opinion, of course, and the opinion of actually a startling amount of people on Tumblr and the like. But, yeah, basically the long and short of it is I don't think the traditional, like, Disney style, so to speak, is going anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's a safe assumption to make in the long run. I mean, there might be a point where CGI animations may outnumber 2D animations, but I don't think it will ever fully disappear. I mean, it's not like silent films where sound came in and just rendered the entire thing redundant. Like, 2D animation still has, like, a particular aesthetic that manages to separate it from CGI, so yeah, I think they'll be okay, is what we're saying.
Yeah, and who knows? Traditional hand-drawn animation made a colossal comeback with The Princess and the Frog, so I can see that doing it again at some point in the future.
Indeed.
Our next question comes from Infernity Zero, who asks,
Have you seen Avengers Age of Ultron?
well, Infernity, the long and short of this question is even shorter than the last one. No. Over to you, Jonin.
Yeah, I have, as anyone who follows my Twitter account, at thejoninmonkey.com. Actually, no, it's just at thejoninmonkey. Never bugger, I can't even do a plug right. Anyway, but yeah, I have seen Avengers Age of Ultron, so whilst I did give a Twitter review of it, that was done like an hour or so after I'd seen it in the cinema, so consider this an updated review now I've had some time to reflect on it. To give the short answer before I go into this, I still really like it. I consider it a good movie. I wouldn't say it's the best Marvel movie. For me, my personal favourite would still be The Winter Soldier. But overall, I would say it is definitely still a really enjoyable superhero film with some witty one-liners and some nice character moments.
All I've heard about the movie is suggested that I probably would not find much appeal in it. Then again, Avengers in itself has never had that much appeal to me. I've been more interested in the individual superheroes.
Yeah, I guess that's fair enough. Joss Whedon is once again writing it, which is kind of a blessing and kind of a curse to some people. I mean, Joss Whedon can handle, like, character stuff pretty well, but it's also mixed in amongst the one-liners, which are incredibly witty, but there are very slight points where you're thinking, okay, yeah, okay, you've made enough one-liners now, you can get back to the more serious stuff and going on.
Yeah, to me that's always the issue with watching a Joss Whedon movie. It always turns into Firefly for me. Like, nothing but witty one-liners in the same characters. Like, I can make a startling amount of comparisons between Tony Stark and Captain Malcolm Reynolds.
I'm allowed to take your word for it, because I haven't seen Firefly.
Admittedly, Firefly was good, but I would have liked it to have kept to Firefly.
Yeah, I think that's what most people are saying is the problem with Whedon's scripts overall, but yeah, the one-liners are a minor thing. There's also reasons people are brought up with more pressing concerns, which, okay, I'm not going to give away anything big, but I am going to have to tiptoe around some plot points. So, yeah, I'm not going to spoil anything major, but if you really don't want to know anything about what happens in the film, you might want to skip ahead a minute or two. Okay, one of the things people have been a little bit angry about is the portrayal of Black Widow. Now, for those who don't know, Black Widow is this super awesome spy that was converted sometime before the first Avengers movie off screen, and she is now this undercover agent who works for S.H.I.E.L.D. and kicks 7 kinds of ass and is played by Scarlett Johansson, is incredibly witty, yada yada yada. In this movie, they take a slightly different direction in that, first, despite always constantly being aloof and only showing flirtation with people when it's necessary, despite all that, in this thing, she starts a relationship with Bruce Banner, which, okay, I admit it's odd that they've suddenly become a romantic pairing, but hey, you know what? I'm willing to roll with it. It's at least pairing up two characters you wouldn't normally expect. I mean, if you're going to go for the obvious choice, it would either be Hawkeye or Captain America, but no, they've gone with Hulk, which is definitely an interesting change of pace. The problem is, at one point during their relationship, Bruce Banner gets into, well, basically the standard Hulk stuff. I'm a raging monster, we can't have a relationship. And one of the arguments he tries to use is that he can't have kids because, well, Hulk was created in a nuclear explosion, which pretty much made him sterile, so...
Yeah, as it does.
So, he makes that claim, but Black Widow counters that she can't have kids either because the evil organization that trained her, in order to avoid a potential problem, made her infertile. Which would be okay in itself, as it kind of shows how much they care about each other, that she's willing to open up by this. It's unfortunate that the next line she has after that revelation is, I guess we're both monsters.
Oh, so that's what got people's knickers in a twist.
Yeah.
It doesn't help matters any that it was rushed writing in the first place.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think the idea was that overall it was referring to her being an assassin, but I will admit, whilst I don't really fall into the rage camp, I will admit that was a moment when watching it I thought that, wow, really? You probably could have worded that a bit better, Whedon.
Yeah. Oh, God. Just from my memory of Firefly, he does drama about as well as he does witty one-liners.
Yeah, and there was also a brief, and I'm going to stress the word brief here, when she's kidnapped by the villain Ultron, but the reason, again, why this doesn't rage me so much is that, okay, I'm going to say something that sounds controversial, but bear with me a moment. The damsel in distress plot is not terrible in itself. There's like a school of thought that will get angry whenever there's any kind of damsel in distress, but no. The problem with the damsel in distress plot is not that it exists, but the fact that it ends up creating characters that exist solely to be the prize, solely to be rescued. Like, they don't have like any agency or impulse of their own. Like, the prime example in Mario Galaxy, you get to the final area, Bowser goes, "Wah-ha-ha-ha," Peach yells, "Mario!" and then just does nothing else after that.
Yeah, I was about to say, there's a difference between Princess Peach and a character being inconvenienced by the antagonists. That's just my opinion, but basically, I think what the point of this is, there's a difference between, Super Mario and a reasonable expectation of what the villains might do.
Yeah, I mean, my only complaint of that is that it's entirely pointless because, again, it is very brief and it only seems to serve two reasons. One, get the heroes into the location of the final battle, which there are plenty of ways they could have done that. Second is that it gives Ultron a chance to monologue, and Ultron's monologued plenty of times before this. So yeah, I will admit that was another point that made me think, wait, what? Why? Because it seemed utterly pointless. Like, I read that behind the scenes they pretty much had to do that because Scarlett Johansson was pregnant at the time of filming, so she couldn't do that many action scenes. And even during that scene, when she's rescued, she's not, "Oh my god, you saved me!" Her entire premise is, "Oh, you're here. Okay, good. Can you actually get me out of the cage? Okay, that will do. Okay, I'm out. What do we do?"
Yeah, again, it's not Super Mario levels, okay? And it's also not Zelda levels. So,
Yeah.
I get the annoyance, but maybe not worth the rage.
Yeah, that's pretty much my take on it. I mean, I will agree that when I saw it, I thought, this is kind of odd. Do they really need this? But at the same time, it's not rage-inducing. I think Black Widow has been a badass plenty of times that it can outweigh it. I mean, she still gets to be part of the action in the film itself. There is plenty of agency in her actions that it doesn't feel completely out of character. That's the way I can live with it, basically.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I don't know why I'm arguing this, whatever, I've not even seen the film, but that seems fair enough.
Yeah, I mean, this is just purely my take on it. I'm not gonna tell you what you should or shouldn't be offended by. All I will say is just keep the context in mind and remember that it's a small part of the film. The one thing I did have a problem with, the one-liners, there's a bit too many of them, but a lot of them are well written and genuinely funny, so I can forgive that. It's more, there's this problem I have with a lot of movies nowadays, which is, I really wish movies would go back to just being around 90 minutes long, because the problem I find with a lot of movies is that they feel that they have to be these big 2.5 hour epics, or in this case almost 3 hour epics, and to do that they throw in these action scenes which at first you think, oh my god, this is actually pretty cool, it's so exciting, look at it, and then it just keeps going and going and going, and by the end you're kind of going, yeah, this is really, really cool. I wonder what's gonna happen next. How long have we been going?
If at that point you haven't already fallen asleep.
Yeah, well, it's not like they don't engage you, but at the same time, they're just exhausting, is the best way I can describe it. It's us. I mean, there are some cool ideas for action sequences, but they stretch them out to these ridiculous lengths. I'm just thinking, okay, maybe we could trim it down this area, like opening bit at the beginning. We didn't need to see that many Hydra soldiers being taken out. They're powerless mooks going up against the likes of Captain America and Thor. We know how it's gonna end. Just like a few shots of them flying. That's it. That's all we needed.
Yeah, I mean, it's a done deal. We get the point before the fight's even started.
I just think we've seen enough big battlefields where things blow up, is all I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
It really says something which, okay, I get the fact that part of the reason why Ultron's so dangerous is that his brain exists in the cloud and therefore there are multiple ways for him to come back, but for crying out loud, when your main villain has 4 different death scenes, you really need to... You probably could have cut some of that out at one stage or another. I mean, I get that a lot of characters would like to take down Ultron, but it just got a little silly, especially since one of those deaths is mainly treated for laughs anyway, because, spoiler note, skip ahead like about a minute, one of the moments is he's flying around in a jet, Hulk leaps into the back of the jet, and then runs towards the cockpit, which is off camera, and all you hear is Ultron going, oh, for God's sake, before being thrown out.
Oh, God. Whedon, really?
Yeah, it's one of those things which is kind of amusing, but at the same time you're thinking, okay, did we really need this? We already had the comedic death of Hulk in the last one, so... Well, yeah, those are negatives against the film, but that said, I don't want to give the impression that it's a bad movie. Like I said, it's not. It's still a good movie, and I will praise it for the final action sequence, which has one awesome element. The best way I can describe it is a giant middle finger to Man of Steel, because basically their plan is twofold. Ultron's big plan basically revolves around doing something with a city. That's all I will say without giving away major spoilers. And Captain America says when going into it, okay, we could just defeat Ultron, but that won't prove anything. So, our plan is twofold. 1, we stop Ultron's plan. 2, we get the civilians out of the city. We do not want them caught in the crossfire. We need to make sure everyone in that city gets out alive. And so, we have a gigantic action sequence where there is a little bit of fighting robots, but that's actually a small part of it, all things considered. Most of it is stopping the robots from attacking the people and getting them to the aircraft that is slowly evacuating them. So, yeah, I'm just... After these big, irritating sequences where buildings blow up and you're not supposed to think about all the people that are getting caught in it, it's really nice to have this big superhero movie with a gigantic final which is about the heroes actually acting like heroes.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
But yeah, I don't want us to turn into a full review section itself, given that we've got plenty enough. Point is, I can see why people would have problems with it, but I still think even with those, it's a good, enjoyable movie in its own right. So, yeah, overall, I would say it personally ranks just slightly behind the first Avengers for me, and I still say The Winter Soldier is my favorite Marvel movie, but yeah, overall, I would say it's good, just not great, if that makes any sense. Okay, Infinity Zero's next question is going to be an interesting one.
What's one type of plot that you see on a regular basis but never get tired of? Body swapped, brainwash heroine arc, escalated rivalry, etc.
Off the top of my head, I can think of two answers. One silly, one serious. The first, calling out attacks. I'm sorry, I know it's cheesy and has rather limited practical use, but at the same time, I just freaking love moments like that. Like, even though I think One Piece is kind of hit or miss, I will admit the Jet Gatling and Gum Gum Storm moments were just freaking epic. Especially in the Funimation jump when holy crap that voice actress can scream. I guess one of the reasons why I like it is that apart from, I guess, the adrenaline rush you get from it, for me, it also kind of adds, like, a little signature, like, a personal touch to the character. For example, I say Ryu, you think Hadouken. I say Gaio, you think of Sonic Boom. You know, it kind of adds, like, that little personalized touch to it, and that can also lead into other things, like when a character passes down that technique to their son or a friend, and they develop that connection, and it becomes awesome. Although, of course, it can get a little bit ridiculous. See Dragon Ball Z and the Kamehameha, when by the end of the series, practically everyone and their mother knew it. So,
yeah. But I see what you mean with calling out attacks. It's silly. It's very RPG, but I love it because Tales of Symphonia ruined me on that account. It was just the memories of Demon Fang, Sword Rain, Tiger Blade. It was so cool, even though it makes absolutely no logical sense in a fighting situation. It's one of those creative licenses I'm willing to take.
Yeah, that's definitely the plus point of it, especially if you can make it so that the attack is kind of suits the character as well. Like, just to go back to the Street Fighter example, Ryu, you kind of have the mystical elements to it. You have the fireball and the uppercuts that both have these mystical names, like, just to give the English version of their names, the Wave Fist and the Rising Dragon Punch, or Hadouken and Shoryuken respectively, whilst Guile has just two special attacks, Sonic Boom and Flash Kick. They're ironically not very flashy, but they get the job done, which makes sense because Guile's a military man. All he needs is one projectile or one anti-air attack and he's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I understand that. It's silly, but it's cool.
Yeah. The serious one I can think of is, there's no other term for it, so I'm going to use the TV tropes definition, which is shut up Hannibal scenes, which, for those who don't know, it's basically the moment when the villain is usually on some monologue, either when he's telling the hero how humanity is evil and everyone's going to be like him, or that try as he might, the hero is useless and ultimately he's misguided, or go the opposite direction, telling them how, oh, you should feel sorry for me because my grandfather died 2 weeks before I started this plan, and, well, we're all the same deep down. And the hero just turns around and goes, no, you're full of crap, here's why.
Yeah, pretty much. It is admittedly a trope that should have been used way more often in Bleach.
Yeah. I don't know why, I just kind of liked it. I mean, I liked it when it was used at the end of Tales of Symphonia, especially with Zelos, who delivers it in his own unique way.
Yeah, as he pretty much delivers every line.
Yeah, I love it when you have the opportunity to do so in Dragon Age. Oh, there were a couple more. I'm trying to...
Renegade interrupts in Mass Effect.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
I say that as a person who has taken several. Actually, there was a Paragon interrupt in one of the Mass Effect 2 DLCs, where the main antagonist of that DLC is just ranting and trying to make up excuses for using his brother as a test subject, and Paragon Shepard takes the interrupt, wheels around, and pistol whips him in the nose.
Wow. Yeah, I just really love stuff like that, because it's part of, I don't know whether it's two tropes or one, but basically I kind of love, I guess, moments that, well, A, I just kind of like it when heroes don't just listen to what the villain has to say and actually fight back, but B, I also kind of like moments that define the hero, for lack of a better term. I'm planning to get more on that in a future review down the line, but yeah, those are tropes I really like. Like, the only other thing I can think of would be training sequences, you know, like the Master and Apprentice kind of way, especially if you can make the Master a very memorable character, like Silvio.
Yeah. And, well, Kakashi.
Yes.
But yeah, that being said, there's a place for training sequences, and then there's Bleach. But moving on from that.
Yeah.
On my end, there are probably several, but two spring to mind immediately. One silly, one serious. Getting deja vu yet? The first one, the theme music power-up.
Yes.
I'm not, of course, referring to Ichigo's because I've never liked that song. But other than that, this trope is just awesome to me. For a very good recent example of this, I point you to Iron Man's theme music power-up in the recent Iron Man vs. Lex Luthor death battle.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
That was arguably the best moment in death battle for me.
It also can be subverted. Like, one of the few good scenes in Bleach was that one moment when Aizen just stops the entire thing with two fingers.
Yeah, I treasure that moment because it was the first and last time Aizen was a good villain.
Yeah.
But it was still awesome when it happened.
Yep. And what was your serious example?
Serious example? Well, admittedly it's sad, but the dying moment of awesome. I'm the writer of the opinion that character death is not something that should be handled like Game of Thrones handles it. It is not something that you should throw out for cheap shock or just moving the story on whenever there is probably much better other ways you can move it forward. But sometimes it's unavoidable. And in my opinion, if you're going to get rid of a character that you've spent time developing and getting the audience to love, do so memorably.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. This may show how much of a child of the 90s I am, but I can definitely recommend the episode Code of Hero of Beast Wars, which was entirely that, and it was epic.
Yeah, and admittedly, I'm not a fan of One Piece, but I hear Ace in One Piece was a good example of that. And no, I wouldn't say Asuma, that death was just sad as hell. Actually, that's an example. Chewbacca in the expanded universe of Star Wars. That was a way to go.
Oh wow, I need to look that up.
Admittedly, it's not canon anymore because Disney pretty much neatly tore out the expanded universe and threw it in the trash.
Oh. I'd be very surprised if Chewbacca did end up dying in the new films, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah. The funny part about that is, the original plan was for Luke Skywalker to have a dying moment of awesome, but George Lucas would not allow that.
Huh. Oh well, either way, someone got to have a dying moment of awesome, so...
Yeah, and it was still an example. In fact, I think Chewbacca is the page image for that trope.
Oh wow, yeah, I'll definitely have to look that up on a later day, but yeah.
Basically, if you're gonna send a character off, do so as memorably as you've written them.
Indeed.
Our next question comes from Train Man. What are some video games or movies that you enjoy as a guilty pleasure? Example, a movie you like despite the fact that you know a lot of people don't, whether it be for the rating, the subject matter, etc. Would you recommend it or suggest critics and fans give it another chance?
Well, to give off what I've already mentioned, I've got to be honest, I find the entire Sonic franchise to be a guilty pleasure at this point because, yeah, I'm fully aware that the dialogue is more often than not badly written and there are some really silly ideas, but the thing is, I'm always strangely encouraged that that series is trying, and occasionally there are some moments which I do consider genuinely good, and they always catch me off guard when they do happen. Like, I really freaking love the way the finale played out in Sonic Colors, and the way that integrated with the gameplay. I still like the way Shadow's character was handled in SA2, even if some of the lines were awkward, as well as that epic moment during the last story. You know, it's little things like that always keep me coming back to the series, even if it has been declining in quality. And in fact, funnily enough, this is going to give some spoilers away for a future VGT, but part of the reason I dislike Sonic Boom is because it's the complete opposite in that it doesn't try. Everything's either generic or, oh, we're not going to treat this seriously, we're just going to insert a bad gag here and just let it roll.
Yeah, I understand what you mean, because I was legitimately impressed that there were a top 5 best Sonic moments when you did that VGT. So, I think it kind of throws the bad moments more into stark contrast. Because the Sturgeon's Law 20% that is good enough that it's like, wait, the rest of this really is
Yeah, that is painfully true. Also, quickly to mention up movies, there are a couple. They're mainly martial art movies, admittedly, but I do have a soft spot for the one which I find as an enjoyable action movie, even if, yeah, the writing and the way they kind of pace some of the scenes is really, really freaking cheesy, but it is still an enjoyable film. In fact, I was watching it again with my sister and her boyfriend, and it was actually vaguely nostalgic because the soundtrack is also like a time capsule for the stuff that was popular in the early 2000s, like the angry, I guess you could call it new metal stuff, because it has Papa Roach, it has, I forget who originally wrote it, but the opening sequence is, I'm not making this up, let the bodies hit the floor, let the bodies hit the floor.
Oh god, Drowning Pool. Oh my god, I remember all the edgelords in 2006 using that ungrainy, air quotes, brutal videos of cheesy horror movies.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a soft spot for that. There's also another Jet Li film. It has various different names. It's known as Meltdown over here, but it's also known as High Risk, and if I could ever get over the legality and the technical aspects of it, one of the things I've really wanted to do is record a riff tracks review, because the movie, it was written as a comedy in parts, but even with that in mind, it gets to completely ridiculous at points. Like, there is a villain within it called the Doctor, who is absolutely hilarious in his own right, but in his final plan, okay, the story starts with the hero failing to disarm a bomb correctly, and so having that emotional baggage over his head the entire time. And so, to wind the hero up, the villain straps the love interest to this bomb, tells him that he has only 5 minutes to disarm it, then runs away, leaving behind a disarming kit and a mobile phone, so that even after he's escaped the building, he can go to a payphone and call said cell phone, just so he can taunt the hero from a safe distance.
Oh my god. That is so stupid, it's funny.
Yeah, it's just, again, it is partially a comedy, admittedly, but even with that in mind, the characters operate on such an absurd logic, it is pure awesome entertainment.
Oh my god. It's rare that I find a series that I would legitimately see and classify as so bad it's good, but I think that's one of them.
So yeah, those are my guilty pleasures. Sven, any you can mention?
Let's get the big one out of the way first. Bleach. Admittedly, here lately there is no pleasure to be had whatsoever, aside from the return of the Iran-car, who I always thought were way more interesting than the protagonists. But over time, I guess the reason I've never stopped reading Bleach is because I was so, for some masochistic reason, fond of the Hueco Mundo saga that I wanted to see if that charm ever came back. It never did. Yeah. But I still do like certain characters, like, I like the rest of the main cast except for Ichigo. I like the supporting cast. The problem is, the spotlight is always on Ichigo. So, I cannot reasonably call this a full-on pleasure, but I can admit that I do get some shameful enjoyment out of it.
Yeah. Oh dear. So are there any others besides Bleach, or...?
Well, this is gonna come up sooner or later. Anyone who has watched The Nostalgia Critic knows why this is a guilty pleasure. Stephen King's The Langoliers. Let me start off by saying that shitty miniseries does not in any universe do the book justice, because the book was not a horror movie. The book was a sci-fi with suspense elements. Huh. And if there was ever a Stephen King novel that deserved a readaptation, it's that one, because holy shit, this TV series. It was so bad. But it was also my first, air quotes, horror series, so...
And the conversation goes on, and unfortunately this episode is running long enough as it is, so I've had to cut this last portion out. I may edit it and re-release it another time, but for now I will just quickly sum up by saying... I mentioned that I also have a weakness for live-action superhero shows such as Power Rangers and Kamen Rider, and Sven admitted one of his big weaknesses was the anime Fist of the North Star. We like them both for similar reasons. They're big and done, but they have glorious moments. And now back to the podcast. But yeah, those are our guilty pleasures. Check them out, just remember that it's called guilty pleasure for a reason. Anyway.
Yeah. We don't like to admit the pleasure we derive from these series.
Except we just have. Anyway,
yeah, because that was the time.
Yeah, and moving on to the final question, as always from Toon Junkie.
If you wrote your name in the death note saying that you'll die 100 years from now, does that make you immune to death until the stated day arrives?
You know, never in my life have I been completely rendered speechless by a Toon Junkie question, but I'm actually thinking about this. That's the absurd part. I'm actually giving this scientific thought.
Yeah, our answers are going to be slightly hampered by the fact that I only have very basic knowledge of Death Note, as in, I watched a review from Jesse Otaku and a top 5 from My Rule of Time. But, as far as I'm aware, and fans of the anime may correct me on this, but I think you kind of die instantaneously as you write in the Death Note. Like, literally, the only thing that you can change is writing down how they die, but otherwise, if you just write their name, they just die of a heart attack then and there. I don't think you can write the specific time. Otherwise, well, the Shinigami would really have no point in the Death Note or going around to places.
Yeah, because otherwise, I would totally find a Death Note and write down my own name and say 60 years after publishing my first novel.
Yeah.
Suck that, universe!
Yeah, I think if you could, like, cheat death, considering how smart and super intelligent Light is supposed to be, I think he would have thought of that.
Yeah. So, I cannot believe we've given this question legitimate thought. This is the first time Toon Junkie has made us think. But there's your answer. I don't think that's physically possible. It would be awesome if it could, because I could say screw you to the laws of physics and get it, and not only cheat death, but cheat the system and guarantee the publication of my novel in the process. But sadly, that's not a thing that can happen. So I have to come up with another way to cheat reality. I think I may invest in a Hogyuku.
Yeah, just, if you get one of those, don't touch it for too long. I hear you turn into a weird Mothman thing, then it just gets awkward.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to become a hollow skull butterfly. That was just You know, as powerful as that was, it was just too stupid for my liking. If I'm going to become a villain, I'm going to do it in style!
And on that note, thank you everyone for the questions sent. In fact, there were some really good questions this month, but now it is time for us to move on to the main event, that being
E3!
So yeah, E3, or Electronic Entertainment Expo, for those who don't know, it's basically a big event where all the big major companies announce their new releases. And of course, every single journalist has reported on all of the information since then, and I don't know how much longer we'll be able to keep up with this, considering the headache it usually causes on our end, but...
Basically, enjoy this because this is the last time we're ever doing one of these specials. We love E3, but not this much.
Yeah, I might just switch it to a Twitter update or something, but anyway, while this is the last time, we can still give our opinions on the things that have been announced. And because we're kind of pressed for time here, just to give context, E3 was a couple of days ago, and I now literally have a week to record and edit all of this before the podcast is due to be released. We are going to be going through this in a quickfire pace, basically mentioning very specific highlights of what our favourite announcement was from each console and some honourable mentions. If we don't mention it, it's not that we've missed it, we just don't care about it, and frankly we don't have the time. So, let's start things off with
Microsoft! Just to throw in a few honourable mentions at the start, we had a HoloLens thing, which it looks cool, but I'm pretty certain it doesn't work the way they showed it off. They also announced backwards compatibility, meaning that you can finally get Xbox 360 games, although...
I do feel that they can't really take jabs at Sony for charging their service, considering that... How long has the Xbox One been out?
2 years, I think?
Yes, and it only just occurred to them now that maybe people would like backwards compatibility.
Yeah, 2 years later, and they're only now technically catching up with the PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
That's sad.
That said, Rareware do seem to have a new lease of life, seeing that they've announced the Rare Replay Bundle, which is basically every single game they've made in the past few years is now available for Xbox One. And they've also announced Sea of Thieves, which is a pirate MMO, which looks kind of interesting.
But there were two games which really stood out in this show for the both of us. Just to get mine out of the way, that's because I know it's going to be shorter. Rise of the Tomb Raider. It's admittedly more of the same in that Lara and Jonah, who I'm glad is back because he was my favourite character in the original Tomb Raider, aside from Lara herself, are exploring a mountain, and then lo and behold, the mountain starts crumbling, there's an avalanche, Lara's leaping about from place to place, using pickaxes, having near misses, caves are breaking in impossible ways. But there is a lot more positive. Aside from the graphical updates, Lara herself is a lot more confident now. I mean, yeah, she's still fighting for her life against an environment that basically wants to kill her however it can. At least this time, there's less of the oh god stuff that happened at the beginning of Tomb Raider. This one, she's actually a lot more confident, and she's saying to other people, I can handle this, get to shelter, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, it looks to be more of the same, but I liked the Tomb Raider 2013, and Rhianna Pratchett's still on as one of the writers, even if she's not the main writer this time round. So, yeah, even though I don't think I'll get to play it for a long time because I'm still not interested in the Xbox One per se, I am going to be interested in that game. But of course, the main highlight, and technically it was announced in Bethesda's conference, but they had a bit of it in the Microsoft conference, so we're counting it. Do you want to introduce this, Sven?
Ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between, 5 years after the last game was released, I have grown a long gray beard. I think I legally qualify for Social Security and retirement. But Bethesda has finally announced Fallout 4. If you know anything about me, you know that I pretty much exploded whenever this was announced. And not least just because it was Fallout 4, even though it being Fallout 4 helped.
Yeah, I mean, I've only just started to get into the Fallout series due to Fallout New Vegas, which, by the way, thank you, Sven, that was a good recommendation. I've just finished it, it was awesome.
No problem.
But yeah, I will admit I was a bit excited by that, and the announcement trailer happened before E3, which, by the way, that was a really bloody good trailer, not gonna lie.
It was. Then again, I expect nothing less from Bethesda, but...
And then they announced a lot of new features for it. An interesting twist is that, for those who don't know, the reason it's called Fallout is because, well, it's set in the fallout of a nuclear war, as in you're exploring the wasteland, but an interesting twist is that you actually start off before said fallout, as in you're living in a happy family home, and you actually start off focusing on a husband and wife couple, and this is something that's actually pretty cool, is that they actually found a way to disguise the create your character interface in that it's a husband and wife taking turns in the mirror. It is admittedly a bit weird that whilst in the mirror they somehow found a way to change their skin and facial structure.
I'm just gonna go ahead and chalk that up to one weird flashback.
Yeah, it might be a weird flashback, but still, I think it is still a pretty cool way of doing it.
Yeah, I agree. I wasn't ragging on it or anything, but I'll certainly say that was inventive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of cool way to, I guess, have both male and female options have a small part of the story, even if they mention that the other one gets killed off, which I find kind of sad, because, you know, it would have been kind of cool to have a partner with you right from the start.
Yeah, more mention on my end also goes to how they work in the special system, those being your stats, which basically amounts to you making confirmations on an application to join a vault. To a salesman who I swear to God is voiced by Kenny from The Walking Dead.
Wow.
That trailer was an adventure all around.
Yeah, honestly, I did not pick up on that. The thing that picked me up when they were showing that clip was that the main avatar was voiced as well, which I think is a first for Bethesda games, because they've usually gone with, I mean, they give you dialogue options, but the character doesn't speak.
Yeah, and now, sure enough, it's basically Dragon Age.
Yeah.
Which I actually kind of like.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they give you, like, the full dialogue option, I won't mind too much. But yeah, it's kind of interesting that they shifted into that, especially since, well, Bethesda game, they go one step further in that usually all of the dialogue is done in first person, so you never see what your character's expressing. But now they're actually giving the character full voices and, like, full facial expressions, which is definitely an interesting turn.
And that's only the tip of the iceberg.
Oh, yes. We also got more the gameplay, which we're told that you can mix it up by having the real-time combat, the more strategic combat, and the VAT system, is it called?
Yeah.
Which is good, because that's the only way I could actually handle the combat.
Meanwhile, I have played so much Fallout New Vegas that I finally learned how to aim. 700 hours of playing that game later, and I finally understand Ironside. But, yeah, they have that, and there are also a few innovations that I've wanted for a long time, and that I swear they actually just took straight out of Fallout New Vegas mods. Like, for one, grenades being secondary weapons. I don't know about you folks, but I have always hated having to switch out my rifle for a one-handed grenade.
Yeah.
Of course, you can also build your own settlement, which is basically the entire purpose of the real-time settler mod. By the way, I'm not ragging on them for taking content out of mods, because it means that they're listening to the people. But anyway, moving on. You can have your own settlement, build that up, and attract people, which that touches on my other weakness, which is building sims. Of course, they've also vastly expanded the weapon mod system, which touches on weakness number 3 for me, which is upgrading weapons in online games. Seriously, they've gone from like 50 weapon mods to 700.
Wow.
The possibilities are endless.
Yeah, they do have a lot of options in store. I mean, admittedly, I'm not a big fan of building sims, so I don't know how often I'm going to use the whole rebuilding aspect, but I do still like that they included it. Also, aesthetic-wise, I love the fact that even though it's still set in the apocalyptic wasteland, they have actually got colour this time. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's still a lot of barren land around, but stuff like the road signs and the street signs, they still have colour to them, even if it's a bit faded. It just, I don't know why, it's just a much more visually arresting and stands out from every other apocalyptic landscape you see in video games now.
Yeah, I will agree with that, because the Boston Wasteland has about 20 times the color of the Mojave, for instance. And speaking of the color, I would like to note this. Speaking of things that they took from Fallout mods. Finally, they got rid of the awful color filter. This was especially a problem in Fallout 3 whenever you saw pretty much everything through an awful opaque green film. It was better in Fallout New Vegas, but you still saw everything through, like, sepia tone.
Yeah.
In this, you're actually seeing the world in, normal color.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, that was definitely a great feature. Even, for someone like me who's not that experienced so far, this game is looking absolutely great so far, and I believe it's coming onto PC as well as Xbox One, so I'm looking forward to playing that because, yeah, it just looks so great from the outset.
Yeah, and in the meantime, I'm lucky that I may have recently found a paying job because I'm going to need to buy a new computer just to play that.
Yeah, it is still next-gen graphics and everything.
Poor clunky 2012 computer, you served me well, but I'm going to have to shunt you aside for Fallout 4.
Oh. Let's see, yeah. Anything else you want to say on Fallout 4 before we move on?
Vague fanboy screaming in the background.
Okay then, in that case, we now move on to
Sony!
A lot of the games mentioned in Sony have been stuff that's announced elsewhere, and honestly, a lot of the big things that happened for Sony came from Square Enix's conference, where one of their big announcements they've dropped was Final Fantasy VII is getting remade.
Now, normally I'd rag on Final Fantasy, but I'm willing to give this a chance, because I like Final Fantasy in spirit, but sometimes not in effect.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, admittedly, they haven't actually shown much of the remake. They've just done a dramatic voiceover about people returning. Here's an HD shot of Cloud's back.
By the way, that narrator was David Jiraiya Lodge.
Wow.
I laughed whenever I realized that because it just seemed so out of place.
Yeah. Also,
a lot of remakes have been announced, and by remakes, I mean exclusives. Curse you, tongue slip. Including the bizarre game Dreams and Horizon, which is a caveman story but with robot dinosaurs, which is cool but very strange. And in a move that was awesome at first but really dodgy when you started looking into it was Shinjume 3, a sequel which people have been waiting for forever. Except they announced that it was on Kickstarter. And even afterwards, they admitted that, okay, the Kickstarter isn't actually for its funding, they just wanted to gauge interest.
By wasting people's money. Oh, you money-grubbing bastards, Sony.
yeah. So, I'm going to quickly move on to my highlight for this, which is The Last Guardian has been confirmed to not be cancelled.
Which I'm sure I probably should care about, but I never actually even heard of the game before now.
Fair enough. Basically, The Last Guardian is the latest game from Team Ico, the creators of, Ico and Shadow of the Colossus. And they had this 10-minute gameplay trailer footage, and the premise of the game is actually very similar to Ico in that you have a boy who's exploring this mysterious temple and he's guiding his companion around the temple in a series of puzzles. Except this time, instead of the boy carrying around a helpless damsel as kind of a subversion of that trope, he has a giant dog dragon thing.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, and it's actually really interesting. I mean, admittedly, the gameplay is very similar to Ico, and honestly, whilst I like the idea of Ico, I kind of got bored of the whole puzzle motif very quickly. But that said, there is still a lot of charm, basically because the way the creature's animated appeals to the sappy animal lover in me. Everything about it is just kind of the way you have to give it an instruction several times before it finally leaps over. The cute way it picks up the human with this little peck, and there's one moment where it has to leap towards the ledge. The ground of the ledge is too slippery for it to get a foothold, and so it's desperately scrambling at the ledge, and you have to push this log towards it so it finally gets a good grip. But because the person playing in the trailer took so long to figure out to push the log, part of me is going, hurry up, he can't hold on much longer.
Well, at least you're into it already.
A little bit, yeah. So I'm hoping the puzzles aren't going to get too boring, because the actual idea of the game and the bond between the creature is, like, it's definitely there and it's appealing to me. But yeah, I'm hoping the gameplay will be able to maintain my interest beyond that. That's all I'm saying.
Well, we'll see, and now that I know what this is about, I may pay more attention to it.
Yeah. And this next bit, which I guess is kind of a highlight, seeing as it's a game that's got a lot of hype, but there's still not that much to say about it. Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, judging from that trailer, Kingdom Hearts is on just as much crack as it always is. Dueling teacups, people!
Oh, yes. Honestly, it does seem to be a true Kingdom Hearts form, and I honestly wasn't paying that much attention to the moves. I was paying more attention to Riku playing a chess game against teenage Ericus for some reason, and the two of them are philosophizing about, oh, Keyblade Wars, blah, 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 the light and the darkness, blah, 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 the light has surprises, blah.
Yeah, to tell you the truth, I could not even tell that was Riku at first.
Yeah.
Because, man, this series has gotten convoluted.
Yeah, it's just... yeah.
I mean, I don't dislike Kingdom Hearts. I still find it fun and all that, and I like the story whenever it makes sense, but... my god, what were they on when they wrote the story?
Yeah, it just seems to be getting more and more convoluted, and this trailer has pretty much quashed any hopes that they would make the story a little bit simpler, but anyway...
Yeah, pretty much, because apparently now we're traveling through time and relative dimensions.
Yeah, but that said, it does still look incredibly flashy, and one of the ones they've added is Entangled, which I've been told is actually really good, and it's nice to see that they're, I guess, branching out to some of the more obscure Disney titles. I mean, or it's kind of hard to say anything by Disney is obscure, but you get what I mean.
Yeah, I'm good with Entangled World. I will say, though, that I will not be impressed if they have a Frozen World.
You know they bloody will. I mean...
Of course they're gonna cash in on that overhyped, oversold cow.
I'm gonna make a bet right now. There is gonna be a moment when Elsa ends up turning into a Heartless with ice powers.
I can see that happening. And oh god, I just know the world fame is going to be some twist on Let It Go.
Oh, yeah.
Although I will laugh if they turn that into a boss theme.
Oh, God. Or, as long as they don't do what they did in that Little Mermaid thing, where there's the rhythm game music going.
Oh, God, that was just weird. I came here for the Little Mermaid, not Guitar Hero.
Yeah.
Or should I say Fin Slap Hero?
Oh, God, yeah, that was just bizarre. Yeah, it's time we move swiftly on from that. And now we move on into the final and possibly the most trickiest one, which is...
Nintendo!
Yeah, Nintendo's conferences have just been getting better and better with the years, I think.
Maybe not this one, that's the problem.
I'm just looking at Fire Emblem Fates.
Yeah, to give away any spoilers right now, Fire Emblem Fates is one of the highlights. Oddly enough, I think we're the only ones who actually, if you're like an RPG fan, then there is a big block that you are very, very happy with. But if you're kind of a general Nintendo fan, oh boy, Nintendo have basically kind of admitted that, okay, the next Zelda and the new Nintendo NX consoles, they're not going to be ready until the next E3, so in the meantime, we're going to focus on transformations. So, they introduced the new Star Fox, which, it looks good, like, the graphics are good, it still has that same banter, and there are only a couple of misgivings I have. The first is that, in terms of story, they're not doing anything imaginative, because they basically said that it's not a sequel, it's not a remake, it's not a reboot, it's a reimagining. So basically Star Fox 64 all over again.
Yeah, pretty much.
And here's the weird thing. You would think there was a prequel because it's called Star Fox Zero. After the initial announcement, we had a developer video where Shigeru Miyamoto explained where the inspiration came from, which was that there was a shrine in his hometown that had a fox guardian and several archways, which is where the fox protagonist and flying through rings came from, and He also said the whole intent of making it cinematic was because he was inspired by Thunderbirds as a kid, which, good on you, man, that was an awesome show. But this is the whole point of all this. He says the reason it's called Star Fox Zero is because he loves how the word zero looks in Japanese, and he thought, oh cool, it has a curve, maybe I can add a foxtail to it. The genius of Shigeru Miyamoto, everyone.
Really, Miyamoto?
Yeah.
That is the worst rule of cool I've ever heard in my life. And that's coming from someone who heard the justifications for the shit they pulled on Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Oh my god, it's... Yeah.
The rest is kind of unfortunate because they decided to kind of release a load of multiplayer-based games. There's Mario Maker, which I'm not interested in. There's Animal Crossing Amiibo Festival, which is basically Animal Crossing Mario Party. There's Legend of Zelda Triforce Heroes, which is the 4 swords, but with only 3 heroes this time, but with a job system.
What, huh?
Yeah, they call it costumes, but it basically amounts to the same. Like, you can have a Link big blast bomber suit, which is basically Link specializes in throwing bombs. You've got a fire suit, and also it flashes up in the trailer briefly, but one of the costumes is Zelda's dress, which I find kind of funny that it's the first time they allow cross-dressing in Legend of Zelda.
Okay, so the choices you have are Link, Zelda, Pyro, and Demo Man.
For starters, yes. And Mario and Luigi Paper Jam, which is a crossover between Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi, which is... It's kind of funny. About 3 to 5 years ago, I would have been absolutely ecstatic on this, but now I'm kind of worn out of both franchises, so I'm not that excited as I thought I would be, which is kind of sad. I hope I'm proved wrong.
I'm only vaguely interested in Mario as a time waster, so I don't have much to say on that in myself.
Yeah, there's also Hyrule Warriors 3DS, which you glorious bastards.
Yeah, I have about the same opinion because I do not have a Wii U and I want to play Hyrule Warriors, so that works out well for me.
Yeah, the unfortunate thing is, normally I would say, oh, I'm glad that people like Sven can play it now and just leave it at that, but the problem is they included the Wind Waker characters you can't get in the Wii U version, and the only way to transfer them is to have the 3DS version first, so I'm just there thinking, you glorious bastards, I don't want to have to pay money again, but I want to.
You magnificent bastards, I played your game.
Awesome. But anyway, the last highlight, which actually happened much earlier, which I forgot to mention before, Ryu is in Smash Bros. Now.
Which officially gives me an excuse to play out the stupid Ryu versus Mario death battle idea I had.
Oh, yes.
I never thought they would do this, but hey, they did it. Somehow getting the rights to do it.
Yeah, I could go on a long rant, but again, this is just an honorable mention, so I'll be quick. I love how he's implemented because they actually managed to find a way to include his full Street Fighter moveset, including down to... his special moves are pretty powerful on their own, but if you perform the classic Street Fighter inputs, you release stronger versions of them, which is a great touch in itself. But also, a fun nerdy fact, they got his English voice actor in, which means, along with Matt Mercer playing Chrom, we now have 2 people from the series There Will Be Brawl in Smash Bros. Now.
Oh my god, it's true. And now I have to buy this game just for that association.
Oh, yes. But all of this has been preamble to the main highlights for us, anyway.
Fire Emblem Fates.
Yeah, that's its official English title now, and to go with that, we also got a trailer of English voice acting, which, oh, thank God, it's still really, really good.
Yeah. I'm glad that Nintendo put their whole funding behind Awakening as a last-ditch revival of Fire Emblem, because it means that they have enough money to pay a decent voice cast.
Yeah, and they're still continuing with that with the trailer, which reveals a bit more of the story. And a side note, I don't know what it is, but I just absolutely love that last line.
Kill me if you want, but do it as yourself.
I don't know if it's just the delivery or the imagery of it. I mean, it's a stock situation, sure, but it just gave me the shivers during that damn trailer.
Yeah, Basically, this looks like an awesome Fire Emblem, and not least because it's like the moral choice system in Ogre Battle 64, where you have the conflict about your loyalties, except stretched to the extreme. With a side of Game of Thrones, but written well.
Yeah, you basically, the idea there is, you play a character who was originally born in one kingdom, but was then kidnapped and raised in another, and the two kingdoms are about to go to war, so you have to decide who you side with. And what's interesting is that they've said, I forget the names offhand, but they kind of refer to as the White and Black Kingdoms, so I may just refer to them as that for the moment. We've actually been told in a stream afterwards, the tree houses they tend to call it, that both sides are full Fire Emblem titles in their own right. So you can kind of choose one side and then stick with it, but both of them are a full Fire Emblem game in their own right. It's not a shortened experience that you're meant to play through twice.
Yeah, not like Pokemon. Also, apparently there's going to be a third route, which I'm looking forward to as someone who frequently chooses the independent path in Fallout New Vegas.
Yeah.
And if it's another full free, well, not free, of course, they have to make money on it from the full game, but if it's another full experience, I'm looking forward to that. And as a side note, my god, this is an ambitious project for Fire Emblem.
Yeah, and here's the funny thing. The writer, I wish I could remember his name on the top of my head, but the manga writer they hired, after doing some research, I found out that he's mainly specialized for two things: supernatural stories and political intrigue stories, which I'm beginning to see that now when you find out that White Kingdom is the more traditional Fire Emblem story. Black Kingdom is you have the interesting challenge of you're in a corrupt kingdom and you're having to try and change it from the inside.
Which, again, is another Fallout New Vegas style touch, which, of course, I really, really like. I don't know why I'm comparing Fire Emblem to Fallout New Vegas, but I'm finding a few similarities in the plot, and I don't want to insult Fire Emblem by comparing it to Game of Thrones, so that's the comparison I'm gonna make.
Yeah, it's all looking really good so far, and there's also an interesting new feature called My Castle, which is, it's basically like the home base where you can run around and talk to people, but you can also use it to buy and upgrade shops, which I think is how they're getting around the whole difficulty curve and the fact that at the end game you get a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
Also, we find out in the first trailer I mentioned that there was this odd dragon image, which I thought, okay, this might be an image of something. Turns out that's the main character you control. They can turn into a dragon.
Yeah. As far as Fire Emblem twists go, is a pretty impressive one. A Manakete for the main protagonist.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's looking really, really good right now. So, I guess, obviously, we're going to play both games eventually, but I guess the question is, which one are you going to play first, Sven? Black or white?
Just for the political intrigue and to wash out the taste left in my mouth by a Song of Ice and Fire that does not involve reading Bleach and then drinking Bleach, I'm going to play Fire Emblem Black.
Fair enough. I will admit I'm tempted to do that, but I'm actually probably going to go Fire Emblem White, more for an incredibly shallow reason, which is that White's the only one that's confirmed to have a Pegasus Knight, and I really like those units.
Fair enough.
So yeah, I'm probably going to start traditional and then get into the intrigue, whereas you're taking the reverse route from it, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much, because I'm nothing if not adventurous.
Good point, yes. I'm also going to cheat and choose two main highlights here, just because the other one is going to be kind of short. Xenoblade Chronicles X, we've already seen plenty of information about it before. It's like a much bigger and better version of the original Xenoblade Chronicles in that it has a massive sprawling universe. It finds a gameplay reason to justify the exploration aspect, as in you get XP, which I love. You also have combat involving giant mechas known as skells, which is also awesome. But also, the thing that makes this a highlight, and the reason I don't include it in honorable mentions, is because during the Treehouse demo, they dismissed a fear I've been having for the longest time because of the way they've been marketing it in various E3s, which is, it's gonna have English voice acting. I was so afraid that they were just going to keep the Japanese voice acting in and just translate the text and put subtitles in, because they've done it before. They did it in Capcom Cross Namco, by which it means Project Cross Zone. They did it with Tales of Hearts, so I was so afraid they were going to do it again here, but thankfully no. At the end of the stream New House, they've said, okay, it's still in beta, so we're working on the voice acting a bit, but here we go. Here is a clip of the English voice acting, and sadly it doesn't sound like they have the British accents, but at the same time, I'm just glad there is English voice acting, period, because this is a subject for another video in the future, but whilst I don't mind watching movies and anime subtitled, I hate listening to only Japanese voices in games, because when you do not have any kind of visual prompt or motion to go along with the voice, it's just off-putting.
Yeah, I understand that, and I've encountered that problem with, funnily enough, one of my favorite games, which was Legend of Legaia way back in the day. Now, granted, I don't fault them for not dubbing that game, because it was 1997 and the dub probably would have sucked every bit of ass. But I still understand that issue because, well, there's really no emotion or cue to go on, so that's why I generally prefer English dubbing all around.
Yeah, definitely. Other than that, every other detail is already accessible elsewhere. We didn't really learn anything new. We just had shown off gameplay footage and English voice acting, and I think one of the voices is Tara Pratt. The other highlight which we have learned new details about is, well, it was known as Shin Megami Tensei X Fire Emblem, but it now has the official title, which is Gine in Bunroku #FE, or as the rather innocent man in the FE Treehouse put it, Gine in Bunroku Sharp FE.
That is one letter away from becoming Sharpie.
Yeah.
Which amuses me on a spiritual level.
Yeah. This is indeed the crossover between Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem, and the first announcement trailer, I will freely admit, it was nothing like what I was expecting, but it still looks awesome in its own right.
Yeah, I saw that trailer. It's still so ridiculous, but I still love it.
Yeah. Yeah, so we learned a bit more about it, and it's only gotten somewhat more ridiculous and yet more awesome at the same time. Okay, Shin Megami Tensei has had this tradition of, when you fight in battles, you fight by using special summons, and it's confirmed that the summons in this game are characters who have undergone a heavy design. Like, the main character, his guardian spirit, for lack of a better word, is Chrom, but a heavily stylized Chrom, so he looks like, actually he looks barely like Chrom from Fire Emblem Awakening, and more like a guardian spirit version of him, so...
Wow.
There's also an interesting focus it's taken, which I did not expect. Of all things, it's based around pop idols.
In Shin Megami Tensei.
Yeah, and apparently the story also ties to the Japanese entertainment industry, which, admittedly, I'm someone who's not a fan of the Japanese pop idols the best of times, especially when you read some of the really awkward shit it puts those people through, but given the nature of both series, both Shin Megami Tensei and Fire Emblem, I'm pretty sure they're gonna explore the darker elements of that, because, yeah, again, both of those series are good at exploring characters and exploring the darker crap that goes on.
Yeah. Well, that's intriguing if nothing else.
Yeah, although admittedly it does raise one concern I have for the English dub, because here's the thing, the whole J-pop industry thing, yeah, it's not just in the cutscenes it's featured, it's also featured in the battles as well as the fighting using the power armor. You can also summon other characters to fight. One of them they showed on was that you were able to summon Shida from Shadow Dragon, who flies in on her Pegasus, stabs a couple of people, then leaves. You could also bring one of the super attacks, summons these two girls who are dressed in red and green. See what they did there. And these two blonde girls who then launch into this little mini ballad which damages the enemy, and they continue to do a dance that for even more damage. And it's just basically what I'm trying to say is that music and singing is a very important part of this game. So if they're going to translate it to the English, they really need to be on top of their game. Not just in terms of finding actors who can sing, but also making sure the translation of the song is up to scratch. Because if the dub falls short, or even worse, if they just leave the songs as Japanese, it's going to be very, very awkward to get through the game.
Yeah.
And yeah, otherwise it's still a bizarre looking title, but it still looks insanely awesome. And oh, I forgot to mention, every single battle takes place in the middle of this arena. So the heroes are like in this circular stage, they're fighting a boss, and you can hear all around you, there's this cheering audience that's just watching the whole thing going on.
All I can think of is Gladiator. Are you not entertained?
It is pretty much like that, actually. But yeah, the sheer insanity of it makes it look like it'll be a lot of fun. And it also is faithful to both series. Like, just as an example of this, they had the encounter go around the overworld, and one of the shops, it has like the mascot of the Shin Megami 10 series, Jack Frost, which is like this ice snowman spirit devil thing. It has that, and then you walk inside, and Anna's the cashier.
Oh my god.
I do like that it's not just a straightforward crossover. It's like, it's a game in its own right, but it has all of these wonderful nods to both series, which, yeah, it's insane, but I can tell it's going to be a lot of fun in its own right.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to it now.
I guess the only other thing I can talk about, which I'm not sure what console it counts in, it was announced in EA's conference, but that could mean pretty much anything. It's Mass Effect Andromeda.
Cue fanboy squealing in the distance again. Not least because the trailer had Johnny Cash in it.
Indeed. I mean, I didn't get to see much of the gameplay trailer, I just got to see a few announcement images, but I do like that BioWare stuck to their guns and just said, no, this is a completely new story, we're not going back to Shepard, their story is done, we're focusing on a new group of heroes this time round.
Yeah, and they're going for a space western angle, which, as a fan of Firefly, I really like, just as long as they don't start pulling Wheatonisms.
And yep, that is it. That is all of the highlights we can think of for this year's E3. Admittedly, a lot of it we already knew about beforehand, but there were some cool announcements, and it is kind of nice to see what we can look forward to in the future. Not nice enough for us to do this again in podcast form, though.
Yeah.
You do get interesting discussions like this, but at the same time, not only do these shows date, but man, it's been a complete headache for us. But
and whenever we say us, we mean mostly Jonin, because I have nothing to do with the editing process.
Oh, yeah. But now, that's the end of this month's Monkey broadcast, so until next time, I've been the Jonin Monkey.
And I've been Sven the Crusader. I have no outro.
That was Monkey Broadcast, a monthly review and discussion show hosted by the Jonin Monkey and Sven the Crusader. If you feel you've been the subject of slander or that your copyright was misused, send an email to thejoninmonkey@yahoo.co.uk. For more news and media reviews, follow me on Twitter @thejoninmonkey, and go to thejoninmonkey.podbean.com for previous podcasts and MP3 downloads. All music used belongs to the original owners. Until next month, have fun, kids!